Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another interview series on our YouTube channel. Actually, everywhere now. We're going Facebook Live too. So, welcome, you guys. We are here talking to T.J. Kirsch, who has a new upcoming graphic novel he's going to tell us about, coming out September 15th. So, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's exciting to talk to you. You were actually introduced to me by your brother.
Yeah.
Who is a saver here at Empires. He was like, hey, by the way, did you know my brother's doing this? I was like, wait a minute, we just ordered that in previews. No, I had no idea.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no, we definitely have them coming to the store, and we added a few extra after this because I know we're going to have some attention drawn to it, and people are going to want to check it out. So, before we get to, let's start with it. What is the book that you're putting out? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's called Willie Nelson, A Graphic History, and it's basically Willie Nelson's biography in comic book or graphic novel form. And I wrote it, edited it, and I illustrated one of the chapters, and the other 6 chapters are illustrated by illustrator friends of mine that I know from Hubert School and just people that I've met along the way in my career.
So then you say it's chapters. Is it telling his life in order, or are these just chapters, different pieces of his life in any particular way?
No, it's pretty much in chronological order from, his birth in 1933 till present day. And it's broken up into roughly like a decade per decade kind of chapter.
Okay, then who? So you draw as well. Mm-hmm. Which era of it did you do?
I saved the best for last. I did chapter 7, which is his present day Willie touring and recording, and the elder statesman era Willie.
Nice. So who else is working on it with you then?
There's an artist in Turkey that I met who's really got a kind of a throwback, almost an EC Comics kind of style. I'm going to mispronounce his name, but it's Koshkun Kuzgun. Chapter 2 is Jeremy Massey. Chapter 3 is one of my good friends from my Hubert School days. His name is Havard Johansson. He's from Norway. Chapter 4 is Jesse Lonergan. Chapter 5 is Jason Pittman, another Hubert alumni. And chapter 6 is JT Yost, the proprietor of Birdcage Bottom Books and cartoonist extraordinaire.
Okay, nice. So I mean that is nice that you had all of these people working on it, because obviously you didn't have to do it all yourself.
Right.
It's also nice because since you're doing a decade by decade, I imagine each person is going to put a different spin on it because he had a different stage of his life and it was a different Willie.
Yeah, I thought that was appropriate just because it's hard to keep people to one style. Everybody's art style is all over the place, and to break it up that way, I thought just fit that format fairly well.
Nice. So and it was all written by you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So it's all you, and you kind of got to do the direction, make sure everything was going in the right way that you wanted. Then, okay, here the big question is, why Willie, and why go to, because this is a big endeavor. This isn't just a little something. Yeah. What is it about Willie, and what brought you to this particular place?
Well, the publisher, NBM, I had worked with them on my previous graphic novel, which I think I sent you. It's The Pride of the Decent Man, which is more of a slice of life drama. And but NBM recently has also been doing these musical biographies. They had an Elvis biography and a Beatles biography, which was sort of the same format in that they had sort of a decade by decade chapters with different art styles. So, and they had a few other biographies as well. But country music had not really yet been represented. And so I thought I wanted to do something different than my previous book. And I was getting into sort of the old time country music just because I was listening a lot to Willie's Roadhouse on Sirius XM. And I was really getting into that and the history of country music because I hadn't yet really delved into that. I go through, stages where I get obsessed with certain music. And so, yeah, NBM hadn't yet done a country music centric biography of a musician. And I'm like, what if I did that? And who would it be? Who could have that kind of just interesting biography in that format? And so instantly, Willie Nelson came to mind. He's instantly recognizable. He's just so popular. You rarely meet people who don't like Willie Nelson or his music. He's just kind of iconic around the world. And so I read his recent autobiography, and I think I listened to it with an audiobook. And it was just such a cool story. And I hadn't really delved into his life before, so I didn't know his whole history and the stages he went through. The only thing I knew was that he wrote Crazy by Patsy Cline, and I knew On the Road Again. Those were really the only two factoids I knew about Willie. So listening to that autobiography, his life was so rich with color and so ripe for this kind of graphic novel. And I just thought it would be a perfect fit. Plus, he looks so different than everybody else, and I thought he'd be pretty fun to draw when I do get to the drawing stage.
Yeah, he, as you said, Willie is one of those guys that whether you like country music or not, he's definitely a name. He's stuff about him even if you don't know it in depth. So yeah, he's definitely an iconic figure that people are going to automatically recognize and potentially want to find out more about.
Yeah.
So when you do this kind of thing, was there any contact with Willie?
No, I read a few of his biographies, his official autobiography, a couple other biographies, and there was another one, another biography by one of his daughters, Susie, which was long out of print, but it had a really different angle on his biography. Coming from his daughter, you see things a little bit differently than others, than like an official biographer would. And seeing his story through her eyes kind of it gave a different perspective on his life, and also reiterated what a great guy he was and what a great dad, and just the fact that he stayed a great father throughout his life to his kids, and that just says a lot about him.
Yeah, and obviously, when you're doing the research like that, you're going to want to get more sides. And it is nice to hear, since obviously I have not read that, that he is a good guy and that he did right by people. So, which I imagine made it a little more fun to do. And
sure.
Yeah, so you're not writing some horrible story. Well, no, that's great. We did have a question pop up.
Sure.
Is there? Because I imagine you went back and listened to a bunch of music. Is there a particular album or a playlist or anything that people should read or listen to go along with this?
Well, any of his really obvious greatest hits, or I mean, the ones that people cite the most often, I think, is Redheaded Stranger from 1975. That's his first kind of breakout album. But I really liked I keep going back to, there's this release of his unreleased demo tracks of all of his early songs, and they're so raw, and his voice is really strong, and it spans from like the early or the late 50s, early 60s into the late 60s. But it's a lot of his classic songs, and it's just him, a guitar, and maybe somebody with a snare drum or a bassist. So it's that was my favorite. But I also like Phases and Stages is a great one, a concept album. Redheaded Stranger, and I really like a lot of his recent stuff that he's put out with the producer Buddy Cannon, who he co-writes with a lot these days. The one that just came out, First Rose of Spring, is really good, and Ride Me Back Home is really good. He's doing a lot of great work even today, and his writing, it only gets better and more tight, and as he goes on, and his voice isn't quite as strong, really, but he kind of has little workarounds that you can tell, because he doesn't have the timbre he once had, so he just kind of has to work around that, being his age. But I mean, he's 87 years old at this point and still playing huge stadiums. So
That's great.
I mean, just the fact that he's doing that is pretty impressive, just from a human standpoint.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely amazing. So what I'm gathering is, after you've listened to a bunch of his stuff, you're like, just listen to Willie.
Yeah.
No matter what era it is,
it's all good. Yeah.
Stuff. We did have somebody else ask a question. Now this is the way I'm gathering it. It is a straight up biography. There's no leeway in it. You're not taking any liberties with it. You're just telling the story.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I didn't want to make up any scenarios I knew didn't happen. So I really just wanted to tell the story as it was, because it was just so interesting on its own. And there were just so many twists and turns and relationships. And I mean, originally I was going to do something a little bit more esoteric and avant-garde, but as I went on with the project, it was clear that his life, just point by point, is just a great story on its own. So I just let the story unfold like his life did.
Yeah, you didn't need to take any liberties. Yeah. It was already an amazing story. So, well, great. So it's coming out September 15th, everybody. Make sure you place your pre-orders. You can get it at any comic shop. Of course, you can get it online if you don't have one near you, or if, due to the state of the world, things are closed around you. But let's talk for a moment about you then. So you've already let us know that you went to art school. When did you start getting into art, writing, and just creativity in general?
I've always been, the artist ever since I was a little kid, and I was kind of singled out by teachers and stuff. It's just the same kind of story you hear a lot. Teachers take special interest if they see somebody that does something, notable. So that was my kind of superpower as I was a little kid growing up, and it was fun. So yeah, I had a lot of great art teachers growing up that encouraged me along the way. And when it came time to kind of choose what I wanted to do after high school, I knew art school was going to be my destiny. So that's where I ended up.
Okay. So at that point, it was all about art. It wasn't necessarily about the storytelling.
Yeah, I was kind of not quite settled on any kind of one art path. I had a love of comics, comic strips, and animation and things like that. But it wasn't till I had to pick a major, and the school that I chose had a sequential art major. And so it was just sort of on a whim. I'm like, yep, all my favorite artists are comic book artists. So maybe I'll see where that takes me, basically. And doing that, it just kind of set me on a path 20 years ago, and path that I'm still on.
Okay, and you went to which school now?
First, I went to SCAD. That's the one with the sequential art major. That's in Savannah, Georgia. I went there for a year, took a year off, and then I went to Kubert School for 3 years and graduated from there.
Okay, and did you immediately go into the art field after that?
After Kubert School, yeah. I sent a submission and a letter to Archie Comics,
Nice.
because Kubert School has really good ties with them. And I did some art samples and I think a writing sample or something. And I sent it off to them. And then I got a phone call from Archie saying that they were looking for an art intern for the summer. And so I drove down there and did an interview, was terrified the entire time. And but they chose me, and I started as an art intern that summer, 2005, and finished that and made some friends there and learned how it all worked. And that fall, they called me up and said, somebody left. Do you want a full-time job in the digest department? So I worked there for a little while.
Okay, and
doing
now you're
art corrections and just general production work, cleaning up original art boards, and a lot of the production work that goes into those digests.
and those Archie digests are monsters, man. They
Yeah.
they just keep coming out. Every supermarket has it in there. It's just like, and there's so many of them.
Yeah, they've definitely cornered the market.
Which is great. I mean, it's still to this day sells on both the regular shelf with the new stuff and the kids shelf. So it's just fantastic. Now we've got a few comments. So let's see. So, well, thank you, Ben Miller. He says he's contacting his local shop right now to get a copy. And we've got Morgan. What's it like to go from artist to writer?
It's different. It's just wearing another hat. It's still storytelling, still comic storytelling. So you have to know sort of all aspects of the job to do either one halfway decent. But it's nice in the fact that you can write something and you don't have to worry about illustrating it.
Okay.
It's nice to really just use your imagination and visualize it. And it's just quicker to put down in words than it is to illustrate it yourself. So it's just a different way of telling a story. But
and it's a whole nother beast though then too, because you're writing it and you're not, it's not over when you write. You've still got to direct it, make sure everything's being done, edit.
You've got to wrangle artists. Sometimes artists quit and you got to scramble to find a replacement, and you got to do art corrections and things like that. It's a whole, like you said, it's a different beast, and it's just it's a lot of work.
But it's exciting, right? I mean, you envision this, you see it, you put it down, and then when you get those pages back and you see it come to life, it's just got to be absolutely amazing to feel that.
Yeah, it is really cool.
Well, let's see. Sal says, what's your favorite comic as a kid?
My favorite comic as a kid.
I know you got to go back.
Yeah. Favorite comic book or comic strip? Comic book?
It just says comic. You choose.
Well, my brother Dan is going to take credit for this, but it's going to be Flash Year One, Mark Waid.
Sweet.
That was my favorite. Just it had a lot of family elements in the story, and it was the first one that I read, first superhero comic I ever read that really had a humanity to it and just great storytelling. So I reread that quite a bit.
And not a bad call on Dan's part if he put it in your hands, because Mark
Yeah.
is just an absolutely fantastic writer, and he continues to be to this day. Everything that man puts out is just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, we got more, man. This is great. Pride of the Decent Man was a good read and heart-wrenching. Where did that story come from, he asks?
Pride of the Decent Man. The story came from that one really grew organically. I started messing with those characters like 6 years ago. It started when I was driving my wife to work, and every day I'd see this guy walk around the side of the road every day, and he looked like the main character in that book. He was just kind of out of place. He was really tall. He had one of those cut off black shirts, boots, and a black hat. And he was always carrying some kind of mysterious bag. So I'm like, what is this guy's story? So I kind of remember what he looked like, and I would draw him like, what is this guy's story? And it was the same kind of thing with the Julie character. I'd seen this girl walking with her family outside of a store, and her family looked fairly normal, and she just stuck out like a sore thumb. She was like tall and lanky, was wearing these kind of thrift store clothes, had that kind of severe bangs haircut. And so I'm like, I'm going to remember that girl. I got to remember to put her in a comic of some kind. So I had those two characters, and at one point I'm like, what if I connected these two characters? And the story just grew from there, basically. And I put, some elements of my own life, and the story just kind of developed on its own. That was around the time when my daughter was born. So I didn't have a lot of time to draw, but I had a lot of time to think, So I was always writing down story ideas whenever I could, whenever I had a free minute. So the story really evolved, and I put together a proposal, and I sent it out to a handful of places, and I got a handful of rejections. But NBM made me an offer pretty quickly, even before I finished it. So I stuck with them, and the rest is history.
Okay, now when did this one come out?
That one came out 3 years ago, 2017.
Okay, so fairly recently. Now, did you move into Willie pretty quickly after that?
Kind of. It was a slow process, this book. I came up with the idea fairly quickly after that book came out, and I pitched Terry, the publisher at NBM, the idea of doing a Willie bio, and basically he was like, "Yeah, go and do it. That sounds great." And because he'd been doing really well with all the biographies and selling a lot of copies of those, and originally I was going to do the whole thing myself, but pretty quickly I realized it was going to be a lot of work, and I was getting overwhelmed with the idea of tackling his whole life and illustrating it as well. So he actually came up with the idea of kind of mirroring the format of that Beatles book, one writer, and breaking it up in chapters with different artists for every chapter. So that kind of made it a little bit more easy to take on and not so overwhelming. But it still ended up being a ton of work.
Oh no, it's definitely a ton of work. But I mean, yeah, you've got a young child too, so not doing all that art is very helpful. So,
Yeah.
Aaron asks, what comics are you reading right now?
I don't have a lot of time to read much of anything these days. I read a lot of stuff that Fantagraphics puts out. Anything Simon Hanselman does, Noah Van Sciver. I'm still trying to get through the Clyde Fans book that Seth put out. But I go back to a lot of my old favorites. Dan Clowes, I reread his books all the time. He's one of my all-time favorites. Chester Brown, everything he's ever done, I kind of study with a magnifying glass. And so nothing that's really consistently coming out that's current. I kind of latch on to certain artists like the Hernandez brothers and people like that.
Nope, that's perfect. In another 15 years, you'll have time to read.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. So let's see. We're about time here, but where can they find you online to follow you, and a website?
They can go to tjkirsch.com, or they can go to nbmpub.com. That's the NBM website to find out more about both the Willie book and Pride of the Decent Man. And yeah, pre-order the book and tell your friends, tell your mailman, tell your grandparents.
Just keep it and share anything that's out there about it, to get the word out. Yeah, make sure you please contact your local shop. Tell them to put it on pre-order. It shouldn't be a problem with trades. It hasn't come out yet, so hit them up. Let them know you want it. And thank you very much for joining us, sir. It was great to talk to you.
You too.
I hope you have great success with this book, and of course, we will have it in shop.
Great to hear.
You enjoy your day, and thank you to everyone watching. Thank you to everyone who commented. I will see you guys in the shop.
Okay.